Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today, we will be hearing from a familiar voice as she was a recent guest in our coaches series and is a co-host on the Prep Life podcast. She started her competition journey in 2015 as a hobby, prepped for one show. She prepped for one show for a full year, I believe, or a year before. We'll have to confirm this. And then at her first NPC show, the Big Cat Classic in October of 2017, she qualified for nationals, and 1 year later won her pro card at her second national show, which was North Americans, and that was in 2018. Then a month later, she did her pro debut at the Tampa Pro and is currently a prep coach with Glam Girl Bikini, holding certifications in both nutrition and exercise from NPTI, along with a precision nutrition certification. So welcome back to the show, Nicole. How are you doing?
I'm great, Celeste. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And I actually am curious. I've introduced you now as Nicole, but I know I'm wondering, is that your last name or is Nicole your middle name?
This is a really good question. So Nicole is my middle name. My full name is Christine. And my last name, my current legal last name is Chiaccio. But it's spelled really crazy. And so a lot of people can't pronounce it. So I just go by Nicole. It's super sweet and simple, easy to remember. So yeah, that's kind of how I identify myself now.
It's so funny that you say how to actually pronounce your full last name or your actual last name, because last night I was talking to my boyfriend and he's like, I can tell when you kind of don't know how to pronounce someone's name or when you confirm it. And I didn't do that with you before. And then because I had written Nicole, but I was like telling him, I was like, I think it's Chiaccio. Chiaccio.
So many people say it that way, so he would not be alone in that.
Well, anyway, I'm grateful to have you here. And I've got to ask you if there is something you do or a ritual you have right before your heel hits the stage.
Yes, I love this question. So aside from what most competitors do about, like pumping up and making sure everything's like hair's done nicely, they're perfect, they're ready to step on stage. I actually just mentally remind myself to slow down. So I just kind of have this like mantra of like, slow down, take your time, enjoy the moment. Because I get super anxious, like ready to get on. By the time I'm standing in line, I'm like ready to get on that stage. And sometimes I can go too fast through my routine because I'm like excited. And also I know there's like a ton of other girls that are really excited to get on stage. So I want to like let them get on too. But really reminding myself to just slow down and like it's almost like it's pretty much a minute on the pro level stage. So enjoy your 1 minute and like embrace that you've worked so hard. So that's kind of my mantra that I'll remind myself right before I get on that stage.
I think that's awesome. And actually, I can't believe I've never brought this up on the show, but what was it like to switch from like 10 to 15 seconds on stage to a full 60 seconds?
Oh my gosh, girl. It was very intimidating. I think like the more time you're up there, the more chances the judges can pinpoint and look for your flaws. And that's really what their job is when they're sitting there, because all these girls look amazing. So their job is to really look for the things that are lacking. And, the more face time you give them, the more they can like see different angles of your body, the more your posing can be like just a little bit off to reveal something. So when my coach Amy told me, like, oh yeah, pro level, you're up there, you have a longer routine, you basically like walk around on stage. I was like, oh my gosh, my like whole 10 seconds that I've been practicing for a year is like a minute piece of that entire puzzle. So yeah, it was really intimidating, but that's the other thing is like why it's good to remember to just slow down, because again, the faster you go through the routine, the the more that I think you can not hit your poses as strong, and the more relaxed and the more confident you are, especially in bikini, the more the judges, I think the better it looks as far as like your persona on stage. So I would say really pro level, having that longer routine is a lot about your presentation as far as like your attitude. I mean, with the Olympia and Janet, she did so well because she did well because she's amazing, but also her posing was a highlight of what really helped her. So I think yeah, it's definitely intimidating. There's a lot that can be like little blips that can be demonstrated when you're on there for a minute, but it also gives you more moments to shine and really like have fun with it.
Yes, representing your journey and yourself as an athlete. And of course,
Yeah.
this is something you started as a hobby. And I always find that so interesting. So, were you already living this lifestyle before you got into it?
No. I mean, I was working out regularly, like lifting in the gym, probably like 5 or 6 days, but I didn't do any like regimented cardio. I just kind of enjoyed lifting weights in the gym and trying different exercises. It was like an interest of mine, but I knew that I wanted to kind of reach a new level. I kind of feel like I had tapped out as, I mean, I was a personal trainer, so I knew a lot about exercise. I loved educating myself. I saw that my body could get really strong, but I knew that there was something about pairing the exercise and the nutrition and being very strategic that could implement some really crazy changes. So I got started in competing just to see what my body could do. I felt like, let's try like a new level. And actually, I had a girlfriend of mine, like, she was into the same things as me and would lift with me. And she like came up to me one day and she's like, I'm going to do a bikini competition and you're going to do it too. And I remember thinking, yeah, I've always wanted to do one of those. And I needed that like strong accountability with this girlfriend of mine, Janine. And from there, I got started with Amy, and she's been my coach since 2015.
That's awesome. And we just had you on for Coaches Series, and that was a huge hit for so many people. And something that I love about you is how clear your passion is to support and help others. And now you just mentioned you've been training, you were personal training even before that. And sometimes intense passion, I think, can breed or even stem from that perfectionist, mentality that many of us athletes can fall into. And you've shared that that's been a struggle for you personally. So, how has that
Yeah.
shown up in your life as an athlete?
I think, yeah, that's actually a really good point, Celeste. When I think a lot of us in the sport are like high achievers, uh, type A personalities. Like we want to, I almost think you need that type of attention to detail and discipline. But you're right, it can breed like some perfectionist tendencies that can backfire. I think with any quality, you can swing a little bit too far in an unhealthy way. And I know for me personally, I would put a lot of my self worth in, whether or not I was adhering to my plan 100%, or, if I was sick and I couldn't get to the gym because I needed to stay home and rest, I would almost feel like, well, I'm not checking all my boxes and I'm not doing everything that's scheduled on my plan. And I would be really hard on myself. And I think that's where my perfectionist tendencies can they can be negative in that aspect. Is you just set such a high standard that it's no one is perfect. It's impossible for someone to do a prep 100%, be 100% a perfect person the way that they envision themselves. Like, we're human. And I think that aspect sometimes gets taken out of it when you're so focused on completing every rep and completing every like macro counting. Um, so yeah, that has been a struggle. It's carried over into my coaching sometimes too, because I want to be the absolute best for my clients. And I have to sometimes remember to give myself grace and that I'm human. And this is a learning process as well too.
Absolutely. And I know you have a lot of big goals in this sport, and I'm excited to talk to you about those as well. But you just mentioned something that stood out to me around like putting self-worth into adherence. And I was curious
Mhm.
if that perfectionism mentality or that attachment to wanting to really excel in what you set your mind to has always been the truth for you or always been something present for you, or if that started with the identities you took on as an athlete and a coach?
Oh, good question. So that definitely has always been a part of me. It as like I was an athlete. I played softball growing up, and I also legit did gymnastics for a short amount of time. And even with school, I always wanted to do 100%. And I think I always looked for validation in that way. Like, I needed to know that I was doing a good job. So I needed some type of feedback. And that was, like winning softball games and getting good grades in school. Um, so, yeah, I would say it's always been a part of my personality. It definitely can be a positive thing in bodybuilding. I don't think it's all bad. I think being disciplined and wanting to do, everything really well takes a lot of it takes a lot of drive and self like being able to propel yourself forward. So it can be good, but um but also I think I've had to really learn that my value doesn't come from just the things that I do, but I'm valuable just because of who I am.
Mm.
Um, so yeah.
I love that you said that because it's not about demonizing discipline or demonizing willpower or making it seem like bodybuilding is terrible. And I think
Right.
that we both have experienced that in our own journeys. Like, okay, let's take self-responsibility and see where maybe this is coming from a need for validation or support or feedback or whatever it might be. But taking a step further and focusing internally and going, I know my value is in more than this, as I always say, build more than just a body. And
Yes.
that's really what this is about. But of course, you've been an athlete your whole life. You've also really invested yourself in school. You wanted to perform well there. We are competitive. And whether it's with ourselves or our life achievements or for titles and trophies, something's driving us. So I'd love if you could share what drives you to compete.
Oh, okay. I think I've okay. So I think that competing for me, it's been different, I would say, each time I've done a prep. So there's not like one easy answer to that. Sometimes it was to try something new. At another point in my life, it was to give me focus so that there was something within my control when my life was basically turning upside down. Now I compete because I am learning that I am good enough, I think is the reason. I think a lot of times I felt held back, especially entering the pro league. That was very intimidating for me, especially since I had done two NPC shows and all of a sudden I was thrown into a new league. Um, but I've recently done a lot of work on my mentality and my self perception, and I want to compete now because I feel like I do have gifts and I do have potential, and I believe that everything happens for a reason. And being awarded my pro card has given me a platform to reach people in a positive way. And part of that is getting on stage and competing. So that's kind of how I look at it now, is just an avenue to reach people in a different type of way.
I love that. I love it so much. I am 100% on board with that too. I think it goes further than us. And I appreciate that you share your mental struggles as well as your triumphs. And you really celebrate
Yeah.
that connection between like the body and the mind. And you just mentioned, it was at first it was like new experiences, then it was your
Yeah.
life felt like it was upside down, seeking control. And now it's because you are good enough and you're now seeking it as a platform. But what were some of those pivotal or maybe standout moments throughout your life that's helped you to see the value of your mental health and now created this version of you who's taking a different approach?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, once you figure out that you can, you know, adhere to a plan and you can eat a certain way and you can exercise and these things become routine for you, and that your body can respond well, I think you start to realize that there's, at least for me, I started to realize that there was more than just physical work that I needed to invest if I was going to continue to improve. And yeah, I've been in some relationships that were very toxic. And I think that helped breed some of that insecurity and low self-worth. And so, like coming out of those, I focused more on competing to give me something to target my efforts to, and to work on developing who I am outside of my body. Just, okay, like I can adhere to something. Like I can transform my body. I can be disciplined. I can be self motivated. I can, communicate with my coach, learn to express. Like, I think that's part of it too, is like having a coach all of those years really helped me learn how to self evaluate, like how my body was feeling, how my mentality was, and then helped me learn how to communicate those aspects as well too. And all of that I think is part of growing as an individual. So that's why I always say, like, competing is more than just transformation of your body. And again, it's what you preach
Mhm.
to, Celeste, as far as like transforming in a new way. But oh my gosh, I forget your question. What was your
No,
question?
no, it's beautiful. Just those mental health pivotal moments in your life or those upside down feelings. And you
Yeah.
express that now after going through some of those relationships that bred low self worth and low self esteem. Competing provided you a chance to build efficacy in yourself and see that you
Yeah.
could honor yourself through discipline. And, it's so interesting because competing allows us to see that we're capable of so many things. And I love how you said it's given you a chance to learn more about your body as well and learn how to
Hmm.
communicate what's going on in your body and have that self-awareness. And in high school, you had struggled with disordered eating. And
Yeah.
I'd love to know when you realized that your behavior was disordered, because that does take some level of connection as well. Or maybe what are some things you did that helped you to realize that?
Oh, yeah. No, that's a great question. So I actually grew up always being a little bit heavier than the other girls. I was always a little bit taller. I always carried more body fat. Um, and I did get made fun of in school for my body being that way. And I remember being really frustrated. And I had a loved one who I respected a lot kind of say to me at one point in my life, you will just never be skinny. And when I heard you will never be, the stubborn part of myself was like, well, I'm going to prove that wrong. And so then, like I said, you can have great characteristics, but they can always sometimes swing in an unhealthy way. And that's why it's good to take self inventory.
Mm.
And so to combat that comment, I decided, well, I'm going to prove that wrong. And I started doing tons of cardio and really cutting my food down. I would say I over exercised and I under ate. And I lost, I mean, I'm 5'5" and I got down to like 107 pounds. I was really small. And I remember, people around me were starting to make comments that I needed to eat more. And that kind of like made me dig my heels in a little bit more of like, okay, now people are trying to tell me what to do and dictate how I'm taking what I'm doing with my body. And I don't want anyone else to have control. I want to do what I want to do. And so it kind of like made the problem worse by people making comments. And it wasn't until I remember I had gotten down to like size 3 jeans and I was super excited that I could fit in and it was like a small number. So I felt like I was succeeding. And I remember like laying on my bed and I could see like my hip bone. And it was a really weird experience because I remember looking down and thinking, "Oh my gosh, that is my skeleton." And for some reason, that just kind of like clicked in my brain and I was like, I actually don't think that this is healthy. And, I like negotiated with my mom because she was very concerned. And I said, listen, I will take help, but it needs to be from a neutral party. And so I ended up seeing a nutritionist for a week or two. And yeah, it was like a very short duration because I had already made up in my mind that I knew that I needed to eat more calories. And so she like talked me through how to start implementing like a little bit of food at a time. And from there, I just was very aware of making sure that I continued to educate myself. I think that was a really big part that helped me is one, I had decided on my own that I wanted to make a change. And two, sitting down with a professional and being educated helped me want to learn more and kind of like helped continue to breed my interest in exercise and fitness. And, my body could do crazy things. So what else could it do that could be positive?
I love that. First of all, that whole story is so real and raw and appreciated. The fact that you opened up about that. And I love how you said that you realized it for yourself. Like, okay, this isn't the direction I want to go in. And it's clear you've done so much self-evaluation and really reflecting on this because you identified how it started from wanting to prove someone wrong about what you were
Mm-hmm.
capable of, and it also then turned into control. Okay, now people are trying to control this. And so much of what you shared brings up a lot of what unfortunately causes this for people. It can be body image related from the bullying, right? Not feeling like you fit
Yeah.
in somewhere. It can be that lack of control, then wanting to seek it. Can be like those patterns of behavior that can be really healthy and, like you said, can spiral into unhealthy behaviors.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's awesome that you're opening up about this because it encourages self-evaluation. And when you said you laid on your bed and you saw your hip bones and you thought, oh, that's my skeleton, you had that weird but very
Yeah.
eye-opening experience. I'm curious now, when you're in the deep parts of prep, how do you
Yeah.
see your body as you get leaner?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I know a lot of people have a negative stigma when it comes to competing that it can breed like eating issues because it makes you so hyper focused on your nutrition. Um, but I think it's actually been really good for me because it's done in a purposeful manner for a specific time. Like it's not me trying to get to a certain weight to live at. It's me trying to get to a certain physique for a limited amount of time. And then there's a strategy in pulling back from that as well too. So, and I don't attach my self-worth to that either anymore. Like that was definitely something I struggled with for a while. But when I started competing, And the more that I competed and I worked on my mentality as well, the more that I detached those things. And placement wasn't if I was a good person or a bad person. My weight wasn't if I was a good person or a bad person. They were just like variables towards something that I was working towards. And I do think that, how I looked when I had an issue with under eating is very different than how I look as an athlete now, because we're putting on muscle, we're looking for, fullness in shoulders, roundness in glutes. It's not just a depleted state, an unhealthy depleted state, I would say. So I think the look is very different. So I really don't associate those things. And yeah, I think, and just my mindset is very different as well too. So I think that my coach Amy does a really good job of, making sure that we as athletes are getting a variety of nutrients so that we continue to look healthy, because if you look sickly in bikini on stage, you won't do well either. So it's all about overall health. And again, the biggest thing is that it's a temporary time. It's not a state that I live at a regular basis, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense. I love how you said this is with purpose, it's with intention, and it's not to live at. And I think when we're in those
Yeah.
more unhealthy or disordered states, we're thinking of things as very permanent, or
Yeah.
like, oh, if I don't maintain, if I'm not permanent with this, then I'm a failure. And you brought up
Yeah.
how you really shifted out of putting your worth in the data and instead treating it as data and treating it as variables, which I love that you're bringing that up. And it takes me back to what we were talking about before we started recording, actually, and how at your recent show, you placed last. And
Yeah.
now you've really recognized the intention or the perspective and the power of perspective. So I'd love if you could expand on how that placement impacted your mental state going into your improvement season and now where you're at with it.
Oh, of course. Yeah. So that last show was the first time that I had not excelled in competing. And so I think at first I didn't even realize that it had affected me mentally. I did 2 NPC shows. I did really well in both, nationally qualified in both, and then went right into like national shows. My second national show I won. So I had very little experience with doing poorly. And so for me to come in last place at a pro show, I mean, I was already entering that show intimidated. These Olympia women are fantastic. And, seeing my name at the very bottom of the list, I was like, okay, well, I kind of knew, because I knew that I was not at this high level, but I think it took months for me to actually process that I was disappointed. Like we talked about earlier, like having a perfectionist personality, like I may not have expected to be first, but I didn't expect to be last. And so I had many conversations with Amy, where we didn't necessarily talk about the show, but I went through a period where I wanted to control everything again. Like I wanted to control aspects of my reverse that were contradictory to how she, had prescribed for me to come out of my dieting phase, where I wanted to have like tons of untracked meals. I wanted to really like not have anything regimented. I think because my disappointment was coming out in like weird waves. Mm-hmm. And it took a couple months, and then I felt like this is really not serving me any purpose. Like I'm an athlete here. This is what I do, is always strategized and purposeful. And so, Amy and I like came to like an agreement on how I was going to reverse my foods out. And I give her tons of credit. She was super patient with me. I ended up thanking her for giving me room to mentally like process. And I think that's really part of being a good coach is, like trying to force someone into a certain pattern or certain reverse that they're just like not wanting to do is, it's just exhausting for two people. But I realized that coming in last was like great because one, it taught me so many things about my body. And it wasn't, again, like I had to reevaluate, like this was not about my self-worth. It wasn't that I was a bad athlete. It was really just, I have so much room to improve. So I kind of, had my moment where I was disappointed. And then I decided, okay, like, what are we going to do now? Because I don't have the time or the energy. Life is short. I don't need to be sitting here being disappointed. What can we do next? And so I ended up, shifting my mindset again, working a lot on my mentality, working a lot on letting myself know that I did deserve to be in the IFBB league. And it got me excited to see like what I can do next. Like, okay, if that's what we brought to stage last year, like what can we bring to stage this year? So I think coming in last was actually needed. I think I needed to come in at the bottom to, I think, challenge myself in a different way and breed growing other aspects of who I am. I really think losing is one of the best things that can happen to an athlete because it can either drive you forward because you're like, oh, damn, that is like not what I expected. How can I do better? Or it can be something that can really suck motivation out of you and kind of just leave you there. So it's really up to you. The decision's up to the individual. But yeah, it was definitely not what I anticipated, but I am continually grateful that things happened the way that they did.
Yes. Oof, I love that. I love everything you've been sharing this whole episode, but that, really resonates. And I think what athletes take away from a loss or a win says a lot about what their journey is going to look like next and moving forward. Because if
Yeah,
someone gets relaxed after a win, they're that doesn't remove the target off their back as the champion, right? It's still
exactly.
there. So
Yeah.
intention, mindset, all of it is going to take precedence over the placing any day. And because you took the loss and you've channeled it into more self-reflection, you learn more about yourself in your improvement season, you recognize old patterns and work through them. You probably developed an even stronger relationship with your coach. Now you're going to
Yeah.
be an even better athlete into your next season, which is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're all opportunities to grow. And I feel like you get a lot of satisfaction out of winning, but I do think the depth of the individual is more refined when you don't win. So you got to take both aspects, but they're both good things.
Yeah, and knowing that that's part of it. There literally can only be one winner or five girls in the
Yep,
top 5, right? So your odds
exactly.
of placing lower than one, lower than first are a lot higher than placing first, in other words. So I think
Yeah.
a lot of times even just releasing the expectation, going in knowing, hey, I'm not competing to lose and I'm not competing to just like half-ass it. That's not the intention at all. The intention is, of course, to improve and to win and perform and excel in your goals. But also when those things don't exactly go how you expect, still walking away with pride in yourself and pride in your effort. And I
Yeah.
think you mentioned, being a coach is something that's really important to you. You also talked about how Amy really supported and gave you that space to breathe. And I think that these experiences can then inform how we show up for others. But I'd like to know if you ever feel any added pressure to perform a certain way as a pro and as a coach.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Um, I do feel so with Glam Girl, I was the first coach on
Mhm.
the team besides Amy. I was her first mentee. So I put a very high standard. She does not do this. I'm the one that puts this high standard on me that, I need to keep advancing. I need to get to Amy's level. I need to constantly grow. And again, that's great. It's great to be driven. It's great to grow. It's great to want to be better a better coach is better for the client.
Mhm.
So I think that that's great. But also, I think at the same time it can be defeating when things don't go the way that you want them to all the time. So I have to remember, again, you are a human being. Learning is part of becoming better, and making mistakes is part of becoming better. So yeah, I do feel pressure as a coach because I don't want to drop the ball with my clients. I tell people that my clients are like my children. Like, I care about them so much. And each individual, I talk to every week, so I feel personally invested in their journey. I think if someone gives you their goals and their health, they're giving you huge responsibility. So I want to do the absolute best that I can. And I do feel pressure being an IFBB pro on Glam Girl. I was the first pro on Glam Girl Bikini. So I feel like, in a way, I'm paving the way in that aspect as well too, where I'm representing my team. I'm representing my coach, my team, my clients. And I did feel that pressure stepping on stage last year. Again, it was brought on by myself. No, everyone was super great and really supportive. I loved the messages, but I wanted to bring home a high placement for them, and I wanted to represent Glam Girl on a bigger stage. So again, it's just checking in with yourself, being realistic, but also giving yourself grace, and realizing where the pressure is coming from. It was coming from myself, and the great thing about that is that you have control over that. So I have it within my power to release that pressure of having those expectations, because the source is coming from me. So yeah, it's, that's part of life, but no regrets. I definitely think, again, that's why it was good for me to come in and last place, because it really helped me see okay, all this pressure is from me, and they were all my clients, my coaches, my family, everybody was still proud of me, even with coming in last place. So it was really myself that I had to settle things out with.
I love that. It's the truth. We do put so much pressure on ourselves, or we perceive others' expectations that aren't even realistic based on our own beliefs or our own areas for healing and growth. And I love that you were able to reflect back on that as well and go, okay, another area that I can improve. And I think that's really what makes a great athlete too, is turning losses into wins and recognizing where that pressure is coming from. And you had mentioned earlier, you were not only the first IFBB pro on your team, but you also took on the identity of IFBB Pro very quickly after starting your bodybuilding journey. And at first, that was
Yeah.
intimidating for you, like you said, but how does that then inform the way you approach or maybe mentor clients who have that expectation of, "Oh, I'll become a pro super fast if I'm working with Chris"?
Oh yeah, yes, I think, um, you know, I think that your expectations your personal expectations can never be a reflection of somebody else's journey, because we are all so different. And I do think that, entering in the IFBB league, I all of a sudden had to figure out who I was among these big names. And so I was looking at, certain high level pros, and I was like, oh my gosh, I am not as extroverted as her, or I do not have the glutes of this girl. And I almost was like comparing myself to all these like high level athletes that everybody watches on, like Instagram. And it was another opportunity where I had to evaluate like who am I as a pro level athlete. Um and and it's okay. That's one of the biggest phrases that I had to like keep reminding myself, like it's okay that I'm not like a really bubbly, like extroverted personality that feels like energized by huge social situations, or it's okay that I carry body fat in different places than another pro. And so like I always encourage my clients that like your specific journey as an amateur and even as a pro is going to be so unique. And the great part is that we get to figure it out together. Like we get to learn your body together. And one of the most gratifying things is watching people evolve in being able to see like their good qualities in their physique. I think a lot of times people come into this because they want to see changes and they want to see them quick. Like, I'm not happy with my body. Let's start a prep because I want to see evolution and I want to see it immediately. And it takes a little bit for them to realize like this is a process, and there's pieces to it and there's steps that need to be taken. And when they start embracing that aspect and then they start to be able to see like, oh my gosh, like I feel better in these pair of pants, or I feel stronger in the gym, or somebody asked me if I was in bodybuilding. I just love celebrating those aspects. And I really encourage people to enjoy the journey. Like, yeah, focus on what your end goal is. If you want to be a pro, then let's strategize that. But getting your pro card really fast is not always a positive thing. I think there's huge gratification, and I have huge respect for people that continually get on that national stage year after year, and they just keep pushing and they just keep grinding. And I think they enter the pro league most of the time with the persona and the mental capacity to handle what it's like to be up there with girls that are, at the top elite level. And so I want to discourage taking your time to get to the pro league. I would say, your journey along the way is preparing you to be the best that you can at that level. And it takes a lot of mental stamina. It takes a lot of physical discipline. But that's all part of breeding who you are going to be as a pro.
Girl, I'm loving this episode. This is amazing. I'm just gonna come right out and say it's just awesome. Seriously, everything you're sharing, I'm like over here, like, yes, 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 yes. This is so beautiful. Like, man, when you said your personal expectations can never be a reflection of someone else's journey, I was like, that's amazing. And then when you really emphasize the point about recognizing how being different is okay and letting go of that comparison, that is so so important in this sport, especially with the influence of social media or the influence of the
Yeah.
titles or like what we want. And I especially like too how you're recognizing that whether you're getting there really quickly or year after year after year fighting for that win, there's beauty in
Yeah.
it, and it doesn't
Yeah.
take away from someone else's journey who was different or your journey. And of course, with being an athlete in this sport, we're getting feedback and how to improve, not just from our body, our coaches, but also judges. And when you've been competing, what has been the feedback you've personally received about maybe your presence on stage or about your physique?
Yeah, great. So the most feedback so initially it was more conditioning. And most of us know who've been around in the sport, conditioning just takes time. So when you get to the certain level of leanness, you're able to see more of how your body is shaped, your musculature is shaped. When I won my pro card, Sandy told me just don't change anything, just grow a little bit more glutes. And so I was like, okay, we'll go to work growing some glutes. Um, and then at this last show, my feedback, once again, we're cycling back, was conditioning and a little bit more size. So I think that, there it's never like anything crazy feedback wise. They never say anything about my persona. I think, with Glam Girl, they do a great job with educating us on posing and getting the whole look together, what the judges like to see as far as the bikini look. Um, Really, it's just a matter of time. It's a matter of putting time in the gym to grow some more muscle, time with conditioning. Um, and I do think that sometimes your body is just, the stars align. Like your body just starts responding really well. And you ride that train and you do great. And then there's other seasons where your body just is fighting back. And sometimes it's circumstances. Sometimes stress is higher, your sleep's not as great. And sometimes it's just unknown. But I think that you're right. I think you get judge feedback, you go to work, realize that it's a slow and steady process, takes a long time to put muscle on, takes a long time to bring in conditioning. But if you can be patient and you can take that feedback and not take it personal, you can very much maximize the time away from the stage, um, and then just bring a better package next time.
Yes, taking your time as an athlete. It's like if you're in this for the long haul anyways, then why rush when you can relish? It's just not worth the rush. It's gonna put you running in circles, really. And I've learned that
Yeah.
myself. um, and of course, going into this improvement season, then for you, with that feedback not being too crazy, maybe something you expected, but you also had a different mentality coming into the improvement season, which we talked about, and how that left you wanting to control certain aspects of it or dictate how it was going to look. And then you kind of release that need to do that. And I'd love to hear what your approach has been, or maybe the protocol has been in this improvement season, especially for managing stress and hormones while focusing on what you need to improve on for the next step.
Yeah, I love this. So I really think athletes, I really think we deserve to invest in our bodies and the longevity. I mean, if you want to be in the sport for a long time, I think it's definitely worth investing in multiple aspects of your physique, not just your training, not just your nutrition. I've talked plenty about the mentality aspect of things. I mean, there are certain practices that I partake in every day to keep my mental focus. But I also this year have invested in a hormone specialist because I do believe that it's worth checking on, as females, our sex hormones, making sure that everything's operating optimally, checking my thyroid, really getting a comprehensive blood panel and having a medical professional evaluate and, prescribe certain supplementation I'm starting to utilize, just to help facilitate overall health. And that's another thing I tell my clients is like, your overall health needs to be in a really good place to start a prep. I would not advise anybody that's having like crazy hormonal or digestive or any type of medical issues to get started in a diet. I just feel like making sure that you are taking care of your body first and foremost should be the ultimate goal. And so, yeah, it's been actually really great to invest in myself that way, taking care of like my hormones. Um, and then scheduling restorative exercises has been new for me. So I am always one that wants to like go, go, go. And Amy actually has to schedule on my programming to do like 20 minutes of restorative yoga on my rest days. She knows that like if it's on my plan, I will do it. I will execute it. And it's actually been wonderful. So like keep taking care of your adrenals and making sure that your stress is managed. For me, just being in a routine helps mitigate a lot of stress, but also a lot of like calming practices, like making sure that I'm stretching, doing 20 minutes of yoga to help with like my scoliosis, doing any type of like getting massages, those types of investments. I think when you train hard, it's really good to make sure that you recover well. So, yeah, those are like new things that I'm incorporating into my improvement season, and they've been really helpful.
Wow, I'm so glad you brought all that up because those were all things I wanted to talk to you about. So
Oh,
you
good.
make me segueing very easy, that's for sure, because I'm excited to hear more about these things. Specifically, you mentioned don't start a prep if your body's not in a good place to do so, right? If you're not healthy, and you really
Yeah.
shared the value of investing back in your body. And one of my like driving belief systems since a bunch of the stuff I went through my own personal journey was really that our body loves us regardless of how we love her and how we treat our body. Our body's always fighting for us, fighting to optimize our performance and how we function. And
Yeah.
so I love how you're saying, you know, if you're going to demand that from your body, give some back. But you also brought up the value of having your gut health in a good place. And I
Mhm.
know that you have actually struggled with that before, or, you
Yeah.
know, this was also in conjunction with hypoglycemia. So, how have
Mhm.
these two physical factors played a role in your approach to competing and recovery, and just your thoughts on how you nourish your body as a whole?
Yes. So it's actually quite challenging to uh, diet when you have hypoglycemia. Because I am constantly trying to make sure that my blood sugars are, so it's kind of almost the opposite of like when you're a diabetic, your blood sugars are high. And so you have extra sugar like circulating within your blood. Hypoglycemia, my body uptakes glucose very fast. And so my blood sugars will drop. And it's, it's hard when you are starting to get low calorie. You know, my brain function, I mean, I think this is for everybody, but like your brain functions well off of carbohydrates, your energy levels, and my body just utilizes things a little bit differently. So Amy and I have done a lot of trial and error. This is another thing that I think has been great to uh, really stick with a coach that wants to continue to educate and really listen to what my feedback is. We've tried a lot of different like variations with my carbs and fats and protein, and I've learned that my body does really well on lower fats, but my and higher carbs, but my blood sugar will be more unstable if my fats are too low. And you know, fats are also really good for hormonal health. And I have been in, been in a prep where I've lost my menstrual cycle. So we really just have to um, like take inventory on a regular basis. I have to provide her feedback. If I'm like, listen, Amy, my blood sugars are tanking. Um, I have a glucometer where if I feel like I'm consistently unstable, I will test my blood sugars like after a workout. And, you know, we play around with different foods post workout as well too, because that's when like insulin sensitivity is the highest. And we found that incorporating some fats in my post workout, which is like counterintuitive to a lot of what coaches do. It's always like carbs and protein, fast digesting. I need my body to slow down its
Mhm.
carbohydrate intake. So we incorporate either like a fattier protein or add nut butter. Sometimes fish oils I'll take more on a regular basis. But all of those things will help me balance my blood sugars, which will not only make me feel better, but also is directly related to like my cortisol and my stress levels as well too, and my anxiety. So, I mean, prep is about a person as a whole. So we just kind of like evaluate all of those things. And yeah, I just pay a lot of attention.
I think that's really cool. Like the fact that you guys have been able to collect that data and then make
Mm-hmm.
changes to really optimize how you feel, how you function, how you're performing. And that's also, led into different changes or different approaches. But it's great that you value yourself and your time as an athlete, but also your body enough to do that. And you brought up dealing with scoliosis as well as stress and
Yeah.
needing to get into a more relaxed state, really. But I would be really interested in hearing how scoliosis has impacted your approach to posing and how you present
Oh,
yourself, if at all.
yeah. It's actually one of the biggest things that I deal with. I mean, I would say the hypoglycemia is the hardest part of dieting, but scoliosis is the hardest part of working out and posing. So I have a pretty significant degree of curvature in my thoracic spine. I was monitored as a kid, like growing up. I got very close to having to wear a brace, but fortunately, I didn't need any surgery. I did not have to wear a brace. I stopped growing, and so it it definitely affects how I train my body because I'm very crooked. And a lot of people don't notice, but when you are so in tune with how your body operates and moves, I know that a lot of barbell work is just not barbell upper body work, like bicep curls or overhead press. It's very hard because my spine makes my shoulders uneven, which makes my arms uneven. And so I'll be pulling or pushing with one arm more than the other. And then obviously with my back, it definitely affects like my muscle development because my scapula don't rotate the same way with my spine being so crooked. It's almost like an S curve. Posing has been super tricky, um, especially because Amy and I don't live close together, so I'm an online client. So she gets to see snapshots of me, and I have to really pay attention to um, almost like I feel really contorted, especially in my back pose, like pulling my right shoulder back way more than my left, or trying to raise my right shoulder higher than my left shoulder to make it appear even. Where, if you don't have a curvature in your spine, you don't have to worry about like rotating your rib cage or lifting up a shoulder to make it look even in a back pose. Um, and even like my glutes can look different, or my hamstring can pop more on one side than the other if I'm not thinking about simultaneously like rotating my rib cage and pulling my pelvis in a different direction. It takes a lot of fine
Mhm.
tuning and a lot of practice to get that muscle memory. And like I said, when you're up on stage, the longer you're up there, the more they're looking for those uh, like imbalances or the differentiation between symmetry. So I definitely practice posing a lot. Um, and initially, my scoliosis was actually one of the things that was a mental block for me because I knew how uneven I was. I was like, oh, they're all going to be able to see this. And I had to really like make myself not see it as a limiting factor, but see it as something positive. So, yeah, maybe my scoliosis makes me look really uneven from the back, but maybe it helps me rotate a little bit more in my front pose, and that gives me an advantage. So, I think anybody will have an obstacle that they have to deal with in their prep, but again, it's your perspective on that. And I think looking at your obstacles or the things that you find that are a disadvantage and choosing to look at them as an advantage instead can really help you excel and have a positive mentality on stage. So my scoliosis limits me. It's why I do bikini. Like I couldn't do figure. That would be completely obvious. Even wellness, I've tried like quarter turns and I look completely different on the right side from the left. So I just look at it as, God gave me this curvature because he knew that this bikini was the category I needed to be in. He took away all the other options. So I learned to embrace it. And I think it's pretty cool that, like, even with a crazy skeletal, like, imbalance, you can still turn pro. So I hope it gives hope to people.
Absolutely will. And I love that you shared all that because it may give some of them considerations for, what they're currently experiencing or how they can overcome it, or other considerations to have when it comes to posing and training with it. Maybe they feel defeated by it, or like they'll never get where they want to be, but really it's just putting that extra energy into those tweaks, or being willing to go the extra mile to make it work. And not only have you faced these various challenges with your body and with your mind, but you've overcome a lot of them. And something I loved is when I got to meet you, just your energy, you're just so awesome. Like, you radiate this same
Oh,
energy you're bringing here. Seriously, like this willingness to help and support, very positive. And you did bring up a couple minutes ago how you have daily practices and rituals that support you. So, what is it that you do in the morning? So, that's been a big thing, is like prioritizing your time for yourself in your morning routine.
yeah.
That's been helpful for you. And when did you start it, and how did you come up with it for yourself?
Yeah. So I honestly don't remember when I started this practice, but I do know that within last year, I had to actually schedule it in, just like I had to reschedule those restorative exercises into my routine. I make it a non negotiable, and it's an appointment I set with myself every single morning that I'm going to spend a half an hour reading. A lot of times I'll read a devotional, something that's just like a short passage, and I will journal. So I'll, start off with like gratitude, thanks, I'm thankful for a new day. I get my thoughts out on paper, whether there's something in the day's activity that I'm concerned about, or, you know, I'm just writing a page of gratitude, but it it forces me to put my brain in a place where I can, take inventory of how I'm feeling that day, and then channel that energy positively. So, and another thing I'll do is I'll just read a book that has some type of positive mental focus. Like right now, I'm reading The Mind Connection, and I'll read like a page or two. I don't spend a long amount of time. I know people have really busy mornings, but just budgeting that half hour into my day really sets the tone. And the days that I miss that because I'm rushing, I definitely noted a difference. So I really think investing in your mentality will also help with your mood and just how you go about your day. So that's what I do in the morning. And then at nighttime, I actually started this practice last year. Yeah, it will be that last year with my boyfriend, where I don't know why I started doing this, to be honest with you, but I just started asking him, like, what's your favorite part of the day? What was your favorite part of the day? And it like forces you to look back at everything. It could be like a horrible day, but it forces you to pick something out that was your favorite part. And it could be like, I don't know, I heard my favorite song on the radio. It could be something so small, or it could be a huge victory, but you have to identify something. And then my second question is, what is something that you're proud of yourself for? And that's something that my mom used to do to me all the time. She used to, like, before bed, ask me, like, what are you proud of yourself for today? And that forces me to actually think about, what is something I'm going to give myself credit for today? If I felt like I failed all day or I messed up so many times, I think it's really easy for us to focus on the negatives, or to focus on where we feel like we fell short. But again, now you have to identify something that is, an accomplishment. And sometimes my accomplishments are that I didn't have an emotional breakdown over something that I normally would. But I think, yeah, labeling your favorite part of the day and then labeling something that you're proud of yourself for today. Um, we ask each other that like right before bed, basically like right before we fall asleep. And it just kind of helps tie up the day. And yeah, I don't know. It's a really
I
simple
love that.
practice, but yeah, it keeps my mind in a good place.
Absolutely. I had done for a while like writing my favorite part of the day on like like a wall calendar, just walking over and like writing that little thing down. Um
Oh, that's great.
yeah, because then I could look at it at the end of the year and I was able to see like all the favorite parts of each day, which was really nice.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's cool that you guys do that together too. And I just love how you said like your mom would ask you that at night. I think that's so special. And part of the daily reflection I give my clients has that question in it. Is what are you most proud of yourself for today? Because we do need to give ourselves credit, especially when we're focused on our growth or improvement constantly. We can be critical. And so
Yeah.
to take a step back and go, wow, I'm really winning in this. I'm really doing well here. That breathes life into the process of growth. And I think that's really important. And I also appreciate how you said to prioritize that time for yourself, even if it is challenging. I think sometimes it's easy to convince ourselves, oh, I need to go focus on this or this is more important. But
Hmm.
when we do that, we actually prove to ourselves, as you notice, like in those mornings you're rushed, it just feels different, like how meaningful and how impactful it really is. And so I appreciate you sharing your routine as well. And is there anything that you've learned from maybe reviewing how your days have been, or in looking over your goals, or changing your expectations with competing, even that has impacted your approach to goal setting now? Like, I know one of your goals is to step on the Olympia stage, and
Yeah.
I would just love to hear your perspective on that goal setting process that you're now taking yourself through.
Yeah. So I think, well, I think for as far as goal setting, I I'd like to break it down into bite-sized pieces because I think sometimes it can be so overwhelming to think about like such a big goal. Like stepping on the Olympia stage. Like, yes, that is my goal. That is one thing that I will accomplish in my life. But as far as the timeline goes, like that's something that's out of my control. So I like to, um, like break those things down into smaller bite sized pieces and look at like, okay, what are my goals for the year? And then I break that down into like, all right, what are some goals that I can accomplish this month that will help propel me towards that yearly goal? Um, and I think being organized that way, like, for example, like as a coach, like I want to be able to get some girls on a national stage this year. So what are some things that I can do within this month that can help me help them? And part of that is continuing to educate myself. And so like I'll put, I want to read 30 minutes 3 times a week on my monthly calendar. And it kind of like breaks it down into those bite-sized pieces, like I said, so that I can help move towards those um, bigger goals. I do think that um, in anything, though, taking care of yourself is almost like a non-negotiable. I think that there were many years where I set a lot of goals, but none of those goals were about helping um, like mitigate stress or helping to manage anxiety. And when I took away from those practices that helped me be my best self, I noticed that my goals weren't getting accomplished as well too. So that's I think why I really stick with like that morning routine. I really make sure that I schedule things in my day that I know that I need as just a human being. because when I am my best self, that helps me be my best self for others. And that's what actually helps me accomplish my goals. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh, yes, it does.
Okay, good.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. So much perspective there. I really appreciate you sharing that. I'm a big believer in systems and routines. And I actually was just on another podcast, and her name's Savannah. She does cupcakes and protein shakes, and she asked me about goals and approach to them and also like for business and whatnot. But I shared how important it is to have those systems in place, right? And along with that is passion. But if you're not setting yourself up to succeed in your goals or to achieve the things you want to, it's going to be really difficult because we can't hit a target we can't see, right? So I think it's awesome
Yeah.
that you've outlined it and then you ask yourself, okay, how can I move towards this today, or how can I move this towards this month? And I love like goal chunking. I think it's so important. And you sharing that is absolutely helpful. And now there's been so many, and I always say this, but there's been so many golden nuggets in this episode. And like maybe you've heard me turning my pages, but I've got tons of notes because you are really touching on important topics, and I appreciate you coming on here and being so open about your experiences and your journey as well. And I'd love if you could leave us with your best advice for the girl who's never competed before but is thinking about competing, and then your best advice for the girl who's on her road to pro.
Oh, this is great. Okay, so for the girl who's never competed before, um, I just want to encourage you that you are capable of probably more than you can imagine. I think when we have never done a prep and we've never like had this experience, we're not really sure. It's uncharted waters, and we're trying to figure out like could I perform at this level, or could I be like this person I admire, or we haven't discovered that aspect of our personality yet or our potential. So yeah, I just encourage like don't sell yourself short. I definitely think find a coach that is a great fit for you, someone that is in line with your philosophy and your values, and that will, invest in you as an athlete, and go for it. That's my advice to her. And then for the seasoned competitor that is looking to go to the next level, every step and every part of your journey is leading you exactly where you need to be. So I just encourage her to just never give up. Don't give up on yourself. Learn from every experience and really embrace your individual story and your individual journey. It's unlike anybody else, and you're unique and unlike anyone else. And I think there is so much beauty in that. So just embrace it and continue to live it out. That's what I think.
What a beautiful way to really capture the messages you've shared here. And I appreciate you leaving us with that advice and considering the fact that we are capable of more than we know, even when it's a new experience, and then continuing to embrace that process and the things that will be unique about our own process. So I would love if everyone would be able to tag and connect and even work with you. So can you share with them how they can do that?
Absolutely. So I am on Instagram at Chris Nicole underscore IFBB Pro. And if you want to apply for coaching, you can go to glamgirlbikini.com and click the application link and fill that out. Yeah, and that's the best way to connect. If people have questions, you are more than welcome to send me a message through Instagram. I love hearing from people. I love answering questions and hearing about individuals' journeys. So, and I love supporting people. Like sometimes I'll do phone interviews with people, and I just, even if they don't sign up with Glam Girl, I still want to support them and see how they thrive in the sport. So definitely feel free to connect.
So awesome. I love that about you. You are very genuine and truly committed to not just the work you do, but also how you show up for others. And I'll put all of that information in the show notes page for you guys listening. That's always on celestial.fit/podcast. There are extensive show notes done for every single episode. So you'll be able to look at those notes and go, wow, okay, I remember she had mentioned something about what she did for her scoliosis. And then there'll be a timestamp for that. So you'll be able to find it and always refer back to it. And if you're not listening the day it's been released, there is a category section. It's gonna be Chris Nicole, just since that's kind of how we did the introduction. You'll be able to find her that way there. And I'll also pop her in the Glam Girl category section as well. So with all that being said, Chris, thank you so much again for coming on.
Of course. Thank you so much, Celeste. And thanks for all the listeners, too. This has been really fun.
Yeah, I'm so glad you had fun. I had fun too. I really just vibe with you and appreciate you. And to everybody listening, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it up.